The alien vampire woman's wings were broken, but no one could approach her, except the brave human soldier. The smoke tasted like burnt copper and regret. Captain Elias Kane spat into the rubble, watching his saliva disappear into the gray dust that had once been someone's kitchen floor. Neo-Damascus stretched before him in twisted metal sculptures that the war had never intended to create, each building a monument to humanity's talent for creative destruction. "Sir, motion sensors are picking up something big in Sector 7, Corporal Martinez whispered, her voice crackling through the comm unit. "Energy signatures off the charts." Elias adjusted his plasma rifle and grinned at his squad. "Define big, Martinez. Are we talking missed breakfast big or right home to mama big?" "More like, update your will big, sir." The reconnaissance patrol moved through the skeletal remains of what had been the city's financial district. Twisted hovercar frames hung from shattered windows like mechanical fruit, and the omnipresent hum of radiation detectors provided a steady soundtrack to their advance. 3 months since the Nix-Hari forces had retreated from this sector, yet the city still felt like it was holding its breath. Elias paused at what remained of a street corner, consulting his holomap. The blue projection flickered weakly in the electromagnetic interference, showing their position as a pulsing dust surrounded by areas marked hazardous and avoid. Most of Neo-Damascus fell into those categories now. "You know what I love about urban warfare," he said to Sergeant Thompson, who was scanning the area with thermal imaging. "The complete lack of anything urban left to fight in." Thompson snorted. "At least the rent's gotten cheaper." They moved deeper into Sector 7, past the remnants of the old university district where Elias had once studied bioengineering before the war had turned him from someone who built things into someone who broke them. The irony wasn't lost on him that he now carried weapons designed to unmake the same biological systems he'd spent years learning to repair. The energy readings spiked as they approached what had been a public plaza. Martinez held up a closed fist, and the squad froze. Through the haze of settling dust and the perpetual fog of the city's dying climate systems, something large and dark lay motionless against the base of a collapsed monument. "Jesus," whispered Private Chen, the youngest member of their unit. "Are those wings?" Elias raised his scope and felt his breath catch. The figure sprawled across the broken concrete was unmistakably Nix-Hari, but unlike any he'd encountered in 3 years of fighting. This one was female, her elongated ears marking her as one of the alien species, but her wings were massive, easily spanning 12 feet when extended. Now they lay crumpled and torn, obsidian feathers scattered in a dark constellation around her still form. "That's not just any Nix-Hari," Thompson said, his voice tight with recognition. "Look at the wing pattern, the size. That's one of their royalty." "Wonderful," Elias muttered. "We've found alien nobility. Should we bow or just shoot first and sort out the diplomatic implications later?" The figure stirred slightly, and every weapon in the squad snapped toward her. Her skin held the pale luminescence characteristic of her species, but it was dimmed now, flickering like a dying light bulb. Dark fluid that might have been blood pooled beneath her twisted wings. "Sir," Martinez's voice was barely above a whisper, "she's still alive. What are your orders?" Elias studied the broken creature through his scope. Intelligence reports claimed that Nix-Hari could drain life force through touch, that their queens possessed enough power to level city blocks. This one looked like she couldn't drain a battery, let alone a human being. Her breathing was shallow, labored, and something about the way she lay reminded him of a bird he'd found as a child, fallen from its nest with a broken wing. "Sir," Thompson pressed. "Hold position," Elias said, lowering his rifle. "I'm going to take a closer look." "With respect, Captain," Martinez said, "that's either very brave or very stupid." Elias grinned as he stepped forward, keeping his weapon ready but not aimed. "In my experience, the two are often indistinguishable." Valeria's eyes opened like dying stars flickering back to life, pupils dilating as they focused on the human crouched beside her. Her hand moved with predatory speed toward his throat, but the motion faltered halfway, her arm trembling with exhaustion. "Easy there," Elias said, not flinching from her reach. "I'm guessing you're having a rough day too." She hissed something in her native tongue that sounded like cursing, then switched to accented standard. "Human. You should run." "Probably, but I've never been great at following good advice." He unslung his canteen and held it out. Water. Valeria stared at the container as if it might explode. Her elongated ears twitched, picking up sounds his duller human hearing missed. Your soldiers. They fear me. Smart of them. I'm told your people can drain someone's life just by touching them. Elias shook the canteen. Course, you'd have to actually be able to lift your arm first. A sound escaped her that might have been laughter or a death rattle. You mock me, little human? Just making conversation. We don't get many alien royalty in this neighborhood. He gestured at her mangled wings. Those look like they hurt. Valeria's expression shifted, pride warring with pain. She tried to pull herself upright and immediately collapsed back against the rubble, her breath coming in sharp gasps. The bioluminescent patterns beneath her skin pulsed erratically, like a failing electrical system. I am no longer royalty, she said finally. I am exile. Outcast. My people broke my wings in ritual punishment before casting me from the fleet. Elias winced. Ouch. What did you do? Forget to use your turn signal during a planetary invasion. This time her laugh was definitely genuine, though it carried centuries of bitterness. I suggested peace negotiations with your species. Apparently, this qualifies as treason. Yeah, wanting to avoid mutual annihilation does seem unreasonable. He studied her wing structure with the analytical eye of his former academic life. The membrane was torn in 3 places, and several of the primary support struts appeared fractured. These aren't just broken. Someone knew exactly how to cripple them. Wing breaking is an art among my people. The victim must remain conscious throughout. They ensure the damage heals incorrectly, preventing flight forever. Her voice carried the flat tone of someone reciting technical specifications to avoid feeling them. Elias's comm unit crackled. Sir, you've been sitting with that thing for 10 minutes. My radiation detector is going haywire. Her radiation detector, he corrected into the mic, and she has a name. I am Valeria, she said, then added with dark humor, former queen of the 13th Fleet, current refugee with broken wings and a terrible sense of timing. Captain Elias Kane, Colonial Defense Corps, current owner of the galaxy's worst bedside manor. He activated his medical scanner and ran it over her injuries. According to this, your wing bones are partially crystalline. That's fascinating from a bioengineering standpoint. Your species studied us? I studied everyone before the war turned me into a professional problem solver with explosives. The scanner beeped softly. The good news is your bone structure is self-repairing. The bad news is it's trying to heal wrong. Without intervention, you'll be permanently grounded. Valeria's bioluminescence dimmed further. It matters little. Even if I could fly, where would I go? My fleet has branded me traitor. Your people see me as monster. Well, you did try to strangle me about 5 minutes ago. A reflex. I was startled. Sir, Martinez's voice carried new urgency. We've got aerial contacts approaching from the north. 3 ships, Nixhari configuration. Elias glanced at Valeria, whose expression had shifted to something resembling fear. Friends of yours. Former subjects. They have come to ensure my punishment is permanent. By permanent, you mean death, Captain Kane. They have come to finish what the wing breaking began. Elias stood, shouldering his rifle. Well, that's inconvenient. I was just getting comfortable with our interspecies chat. He tapped his comm Martinez. How long until they reach us? 15 minutes, sir. Should we fall back? He looked down at Valeria, who was struggling again to rise. Her wings, despite their damage, were clearly trying to extend in preparation for flight that would never come. Something in her expression reminded him of every wounded soldier he'd ever carried from a battlefield. Negative. Prep the portable med kit and find us some hard cover. Looks like we're playing doctor under fire. Sir, with all due respect, that alien nearly killed you once already. Nearly being the operative phrase, Martinez. Elias knelt beside Valeria again. Besides, where's your sense of adventure? It's not every day we get to perform emergency xenobiology in a war zone. The abandoned research facility smelled like ozone and broken dreams. Elias had managed to get Valeria inside before her former subjects arrived, though "get" was a generous term for what had essentially been her crawling while he provided motivational commentary about the healing properties of not being dead. "Your bedside manner needs work," Valeria said, wincing as he spread the contents of his expanded med kit across a dust-covered lab bench. Her bioluminescence had stabilized somewhat, casting shifting patterns across the walls like a living aurora. "I'm a soldier, not a doctor. Though I did play one in college." He held up a nanosuture gun and grinned. "Fair warning, I haven't done this on anything with wings since my sophomore biology practicum. That was a fruit bat, and it filed a complaint." "A complaint. Long story. The point is, this might tickle." Valeria watched him calibrate the device with surprising expertise. "You were studying to become a healer before the war?" "Bioengineering, specifically xenobiology. Ironic, isn't it? I wanted to understand alien life forms, and now I spend most of my time shooting them." He activated the suture gun's diagnostic mode. Though to be fair, most of them weren't interested in conversation. The scanner revealed the intricate network of crystalline bone, synthetic muscle fibers, and energy conduits that comprised her wing structure. It was biological engineering on a scale that made human technology look like stone tools. "This is incredible," he murmured, genuinely awed. "Your wings aren't just for flight. They're energy collectors, atmospheric processors, and communication arrays all in one. We are symbiotic with our technology. What you call cybernetics, we call evolution." Valeria's voice carried pride despite her circumstances. Each wing contains approximately 10,000 energy-conducting filaments. And right now, about 3,000 of them are severed. Elias began working, his hands steady despite the complexity of the task. "This is going to require direct contact with the wing membrane. Fair warning, I might accidentally drain your life force or something. The process works in reverse, human. I drain yours. Right. Well, if I start looking pale, feel free to mention it." He placed his hand on the torn wing surface and immediately felt a strange tingling sensation, like static electricity made liquid. "Ah, that's new." Valeria's eyes widened. "You're not being drained. How is this possible?" "Maybe I'm defective. My mom always said I was special." He continued working, using the nanosutures to reconnect severed energy filaments. "Tell me about your people. When you're not conquering the galaxy, what do you do for fun?" "We do not conquer. We expand. Resources become scarce, so we seek new worlds." "Right, expanding. Much more diplomatic than conquering." Another filament reconnected, and Valeria's wing twitched involuntarily. "Sorry. Did I mention the tickling part? Your humor is peculiar. Do all humans make jokes while performing medical procedures?" "Only the good ones. It helps with the existential dread." He paused in his work. "So why did you really suggest peace talks? Besides the obvious benefit of not having to kill each other constantly." Valeria was quiet for several moments, her bioluminescence shifting to deeper hues. "I have lived for 800 of your years. I have seen countless worlds stripped of resources, countless species displaced or destroyed, including my own original homeworld." "Wait, you're refugees too?" "Were. Long ago. We became nomadic by necessity, then by choice, then by nature. But expansion without purpose becomes destruction without meaning." She flexed her wings slightly as more connections restored. "I began to wonder if perhaps coexistence might prove more beneficial than conquest." "Expansion," Elias corrected with a grin. "You said you don't conquer. Do not mock me while repairing my wings, human. I may yet recover enough strength to drain you properly." "Looking forward to it. By the way, it's Elias. We're past the human stage of our relationship." Outside, engines screamed overhead as the search craft made another pass. Martinez's voice crackled through the comm. "Sir, they've detected our energy signatures. 3 minutes until they breach the facility." Elias didn't pause in his work. "Martinez, remember that experimental plasma grenade in Thompson's pack? The one marked, 'Do not use under any circumstances'? That's the one. Sometimes circumstances change." He reconnected another cluster of filaments, and Valeria's wing membrane began to glow with renewed energy. "How's that feel?" "Like someone is rebuilding my soul, one thread at a time." She attempted to extend the wing and managed a partial spread. "This should not be possible. The ritual breaking severs connections that cannot heal." "Well, I've always been terrible at following rules. Must be genetic." The facility shuddered as something large landed outside. "Speaking of rules, what's the protocol when former subjects come calling?" "They will offer me a choice, final death or service as a wingless servant." "Those are terrible options. What's behind door number 3? "There is no door number 3. "There is now." Elias finished the last connection and stepped back. "Try moving it." Valeria's wing spread halfway, energy crackling along the restored filaments. For the first time since he'd found her, she smiled, and the expression transformed her face completely. "You have given me hope, Elias Kane. This is a gift I had not expected to receive again. Don't get sentimental on me yet. We still have to deal with your former fan club." He checked his rifle charge. "Any chance they'll be reasonable about this?" "They are soldiers following orders. Reason is not a factor." "Great. Well, nothing like a good firefight to test wing repairs." The facility's emergency lighting cast red shadows across the laboratory as Valeria attempted her first real flight test. She managed 3 feet of altitude before gravity reminded her that wing repair was an ongoing process, not an instant solution. "Well, that's progress," Elias said, helping her up from where she'd landed in an undignified heap behind a quantum spectrometer. "Yesterday you couldn't even lift your arms. Today you're achieving brief moments of defying physics." "Your encouragement is overwhelming," she replied, though her tone carried more amusement than irritation. Over the past 3 days, she'd grown accustomed to his particular brand of optimism. They'd established a routine of sorts. Mornings were for wing therapy, afternoons for equipment scavenging, and evenings for sharing stories over reheated military rations that Valeria insisted were worse than anything her species had encountered in 8 centuries of space travel. "I once conquered a system whose primary export was fermented algae paste," she said, poking suspiciously at something labeled beef stroganoff. "This is somehow worse." "Hey, that stroganoff has won awards." "What kind of awards?" "Most creative use of preservatives, 2387. Very prestigious in certain circles." The facility had proven to be a treasure trove of abandoned research equipment. Elias had rigged together an impressive array of biotechnology, including a cellular regeneration matrix that was slowly rebuilding the damaged portions of Valeria's wing membranes. The process required daily sessions where he maintained physical contact with her wings while the machine worked, a procedure that should have drained his life force completely. Instead, something entirely different was happening. "Your resistance to my abilities grows stronger each day," Valeria observed during their evening session. The regeneration matrix hummed quietly as it worked, casting blue light across his hands where they rested on her wing surface. "It defies everything I know about human biology. Maybe I'm just stubborn. My high school teachers certainly thought so." He watched the scanner display as damaged tissue reformed itself. "Or maybe your people don't know as much about human biology as they think. We have studied your species extensively." "Sure, but have you studied humans who've spent 3 years breathing alien atmosphere, eating synthesized food, and getting regularly exposed to exotic radiation?" He grinned. "I'm probably not your standard baseline anymore." The scanner chimed softly as another section of wing membrane achieved full functionality. Valeria flexed experimentally and managed to maintain the motion without the trembling that had plagued her for weeks. "Excellent progress," Elias said. "At this rate, You'll be ready for atmospheric flight within days. And then what? I cannot return to my people, and yours will never accept me. Well, there's always retirement. I hear the Outer Rim colonies are nice this time of year. Low population, high tolerance for eccentrics. I am a queen without a kingdom, Elias. Retirement is not typically an option for my kind. Former queen, he corrected. Current patient with a remarkably fast healing rate and a tendency toward existential brooding. Their conversation was interrupted by Martinez's voice on the comm. Sir, we've got movement in the northern perimeter. Looks like our friends are back, and they brought reinforcements. Elias moved to the window and peered through the cracked thermoplast. 3 Nixhari craft circled overhead, their sleek forms cutting through the perpetual haze of the ruined city. As he watched, a 4th ship descended, this one larger and more heavily armed. That's a command vessel, Valeria said, joining him at the window. Her improved mobility was evident in how smoothly she moved, though her wings remained carefully folded. They're not just here to finish my execution anymore. What changed? You did. A human who can resist Nixhari energy drain, who possesses detailed knowledge of our physiology, who has successfully repaired our technology. Her bioluminescence shifted to patterns he'd learned indicated deep concern. You've become a strategic asset. Wonderful. I've always wanted to be classified as military hardware. He checked his rifle's charge level. So what are our options? Surrender, fight, or attempt to negotiate. You left out the 4th option. Which is? Wing it. Pun absolutely intended. Before she could respond, a new voice echoed from the facility's communication system, speaking in fluid Nixhari. Valeria stiffened, her ears flattening against her head. That's Kale, that's my former second-in-command. He's demanding I surrender myself and the human who has been contaminating me with foreign ideologies. Contaminating? I prefer culturally enriching. Elias activated his comm. Martinez. Status report. They're landing troops, sir. I count at least 20 Nixhari warriors forming a perimeter around the building. Also, we've got human military vehicles approaching from the south. Looks like someone called in the cavalry. Great. A 3-way standoff in a research facility. This should end well. Valeria placed a hand on his shoulder, and he felt the strange energy connection that had developed between them over the past days. Instead of draining his strength, it seemed to flow both ways now, creating a feedback loop that neither of them fully understood. Whatever happens, she said, I want you to know that you have given me something I thought lost forever. What's that? The belief that enemies might become something more. Outside, engines roared as human dropships settled into landing positions. Through the facility's speakers, Kale that's continued his demands, now alternating between Nixhari and heavily accented Standard. Well, Elias said, checking his weapon one final time, looks like it's time to test whether diplomacy works better than wing repair. The facility's main laboratory had become an impromptu diplomatic venue, though diplomatic was generous considering the number of weapons pointed in various directions. Kale that stood with rigid military bearing, his own wings spread in a display of dominance that Valeria could no longer match. Behind him, 4 Nixhari warriors maintained formation, their energy weapons humming with barely contained power. Major Sarah Cross represented the human contingent, her tactical armor scarred from countless battles. She kept her plasma rifle lowered but ready, flanked by 2 Marines who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else in the galaxy. So let me understand this correctly, Major Cross said, her voice carrying the weary patience of someone accustomed to impossible situations. Captain Kane has been conducting unauthorized medical experiments on an enemy combatant. Unauthorized medical assistance, Elias corrected. There's a difference. One sounds like I'm violating the Geneva Convention, the other sounds like I'm just really bad at following orders. And you, she continued, turning to Valeria, are supposedly the queen we've been hunting for 3 years. Former queen, Valeria replied. Currently unemployed alien with recently improved mobility. Kale that spoke for the first time since the standoff began. She is exile. Traitor. Her crimes against our people demand final judgment. Which crimes specifically? Elias asked. Because from where I'm standing, suggesting peace talks seems pretty reasonable. She corrupted our sacred purpose with human weakness. Right. The weakness of not wanting to die in pointless wars. Terrible character flaw. Elias looked between the two groups. You know, I'm seeing a communication problem here. Maybe we should start with basics. A low rumble shook the facility, and every weapon in the room snapped toward the sound. Through the reinforced windows, something large moved in the shadows between buildings. Please tell me that's just regular urban decay, Major Cross said. Martinez's voice crackled through the comm. Sir, facility defense systems are coming online. Automated sentries are deploying from the walls. Automated what now? Elias grabbed his scanner and ran it across the nearest wall panel. Energy readings spiked as dormant systems awakened throughout the building. Oh, that's not good. Red warning lights bathed the laboratory as a synthesized voice echoed from hidden speakers. Unauthorized biological entities detected. Multiple species present without proper clearance. Initiating containment protocols. Containment protocols? Valeria asked. In a research facility, that usually means lockdown, sterilization, and asking questions later, Elias explained. Sometimes much later. Blast doors began sliding shut across the facility's exits with the inexorable finality of bureaucratic efficiency. Outside, mechanical whirring announced the activation of defense turrets. Well, Major Cross said, lowering her weapon entirely, this complicates things. The first automated sentry rounded the corner into their laboratory, a spider-like construct bristling with sensors and weapon pods. It swept the room with a scanning beam, clearly confused by the mixture of species present. Biological contamination detected, it announced in the cheerful tone reserved for safety announcements and impending doom. Beginning sterilization sequence in 60 seconds. I vote we postpone the diplomatic tensions and focus on not being sterilized, Elias said. Anyone object? Kale that's folded his wings, a gesture that among his people indicated temporary truce. The machine does not discriminate between enemies. Wonderful. Our first successful act of interspecies cooperation is running from a genocidal cleaning robot. Elias pulled up building schematics on his scanner. The control center is 3 levels down. If we can reach it, we might be able to shut down the defense grid. Might? Major Cross asked. I'm an optimist. Sue me. More sentries emerged from wall alcoves, their movements coordinated with mechanical precision. The lead unit began charging its primary weapon, energy building with a sound like an angry electrical storm. 30 seconds to sterilization, it announced helpfully. Valeria stepped forward, her wings spreading to their full extent for the first time since Elias had found her. The healed membranes caught the emergency lighting, casting intricate shadows across the walls. I can disable their targeting systems temporarily, she said. Nixhari energy manipulation can overload their sensors. How temporarily? Major Cross asked, already moving toward the exit. Long enough for us to reach the next corridor. Probably. Probably. I'm new at the optimism thing, Valeria admitted. Energy crackled along her wings as she unleashed a controlled electromagnetic pulse. The sentries froze mid-motion, their sensor arrays sparking and flickering. 20 seconds to sterilization. Please remain calm and motionless for efficient processing. Move! Elias shouted. They ran through corridors that had become a maze of descending blast doors and emerging defense systems. Kael'thats and his warriors moved with fluid grace, while the humans relied on tactical training and creative cursing. Valeria flew in short bursts, her newly repaired wings allowing her to scout ahead and disable sensors. You know, Elias called out as they slid under a closing door, when I woke up this morning, Alien Queen rehabilitation therapy wasn't on my schedule. Your scheduling needs improvement, Valeria replied, disabling another sentry with a precise energy burst. 10 seconds to sterilization. Thank you for your cooperation in this matter. They reached the control center as the final countdown began, bursting through doors that sealed immediately behind them. The room was a cathedral of technology, banks of computers humming with processing power that defied human understanding. "Please tell me someone knows how to operate ancient alien computer systems," Major Cross said. Elias was already at the main console, his hands dancing across interfaces that shifted and adapted to his touch. Turns out 3 years of jury-rigging human tech to work with alien power sources teaches you a few things about universal programming languages. 5, 4, 3. "Elias," Valeria said softly. 2, 1. The countdown stopped. The red lighting shifted to amber, then green. Throughout the facility, weapon systems powered down with mechanical sighs of relief. Sterilization sequence cancelled. "Have a pleasant day." In the sudden quiet, surrounded by former enemies and questionable allies, Elias looked around the control room and grinned. "Anyone else feeling like we just passed some kind of test?" 2 months after what military historians would eventually call the accidental peace talks, Elias stood on the observation deck of the newly established Harmony Station, watching the sunrise paint Neo-Damascus in shades of gold and possibility. The city was still largely ruins, but construction crews worked alongside Nixhari energy specialists to rebuild what war had torn down. "Your species has a peculiar obsession with watching stellar bodies rise and set," Valeria observed, joining him at the reinforced viewport. Her wings were fully healed now, their obsidian surface catching and reflecting the morning light in patterns that seemed almost hypnotic. "It's called hope," Elias replied. "We like to mark the passage of time with cosmic events. Makes us feel important. And yet you spend most of your time making jokes about cosmic insignificance." Consistency was never humanity's strong suit. The research facility's ancient computer systems had yielded more than just salvation from genocidal cleaning robots. Hidden in their memory banks was a complete historical record of the original conflict between humans and Nixhari, including evidence that both species had been manipulated by arms dealers from the Centauri Syndicate. The third party had profited immensely from 3 years of interstellar warfare, selling weapons to both sides while ensuring neither achieved decisive victory. "You know what I find most amusing about this whole situation?" Major Cross said, approaching from the station's command center. She wore the insignia of the newly formed Interspecies Cooperation Initiative, a diplomatic corps that existed primarily because no one else wanted to deal with the paperwork. "The fact that we're all still alive?" Elias suggested. "The fact that the most successful peace negotiation in galactic history happened because we were too busy running from cleaning robots to properly hate each other." Kale That's emerged from the nearby conference room, his formal military bearings somewhat softened by weeks of working alongside human engineers. "The morning briefings are concluded. Resource allocation proceeds ahead of schedule. How's the integration program going?" Elias asked. "Surprisingly well. Your people possess an admirable talent for improvisation. My warriors are learning to appreciate this quality. And your people have an impressive grasp of energy physics. Our engineers are practically giddy." Valeria smiled at the exchange. 6 months ago, you were trying to kill each other. Now you debate the merits of improvisation versus precision. "Character growth," Elias said. "I read about it in a book once." The station's communication system chimed softly. Incoming transmission from the Colonial Defense Council and Nixhari High Command. "Joint transmissions," Major Cross noted. "Still gives me vertigo." The holographic display activated, showing Admiral Patterson of the Colonial Forces alongside High Commander Veltar of the Nixhari Fleet. The sight of them sharing the same transmission space still seemed surreal. "Status report on the reconstruction efforts," Admiral Patterson requested. "Proceeding smoothly," Major Cross replied. "The combined engineering teams have restored power to 60% of Neo-Damascus. The Nixhari energy distribution networks are proving remarkably compatible with our infrastructure." High Commander Veltar spoke with the measured cadence of her species. "The human approach to structural reinforcement offers unexpected advantages. We are learning from each other. Any problems with personnel integration?" Admiral Patterson asked. Elias stepped forward. "Nothing a few shared meals and mutual complaints about military food couldn't solve. Turns out griping about logistics is universal." Speaking of logistics, Veltar said. "We have received confirmation that the Centauri Syndicate has agreed to reparations negotiations. Their weapons-dealing operation has been discouraged." "Discouraged how?" Major Cross asked. "Let's just say they've decided to focus on less controversial exports, like art supplies." After the transmission ended, the small group stood in comfortable silence, watching the city below begin another day of cautious cooperation. Human and Nixhari workers moved between construction sites, their initial wariness giving way to professional respect. "You know what's funny?" Elias said eventually. "I spent 3 years of war learning how to break things efficiently. Turns out I'm better at fixing them." "You've certainly had practice," Valeria replied, flexing her wings with unconscious grace. "Though I remain curious about your resistance to energy drain. The medical scans still show anomalous readings. Maybe some mysteries are worth preserving." "Adds to my charm." "Your charm was never in question. Your sanity, however." Kale that's cleared his throat, a gesture he'd adopted from human social customs. "If I may interrupt this philosophical discussion, there are supply manifests requiring review." "The glamorous life of peacekeeping," Major Cross sighed. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity of warfare." "No, you don't," Elias said. "No, I don't. But the paperwork was definitely easier when our only concern was not dying." As the others departed for their respective duties, Valeria remained at the viewport. Her reflection in the thermoplast showed a being transformed by circumstances she could never have imagined. The exile who had expected to die alone in the ruins had become a bridge between worlds. "Regrets?" Elias asked, joining her reflection in the glass. "About seeking peace? Never. About the path that led here." She considered the question seriously. "Perhaps I regret that it required near-death and accidental cooperation to achieve what diplomacy should have accomplished years ago." "Well, look at it this way. Future historians will have a really interesting story to tell. The human soldier who fixed an alien queen's wings and accidentally ended a war? Don't forget the part about the genocidal cleaning robots. That's important context." Valeria's laughter carried the warmth that had replaced the bitter edge of exile. "You've taught me something valuable, Elias Kane. How to jury-rig wing repairs using stolen medical equipment. How to find hope in impossible circumstances. How to see enemies as potential allies. How to believe that broken things can be made whole again." He smiled, watching a Nixhari transport dock alongside a human supply ship at the station's loading bay. "Not bad for a day's work, even if it did take 2 months to finish." Outside, Neo-Damascus continued its slow resurrection under alien suns, tended by former enemies who had learned that cooperation built more lasting structures than conquest. It wasn't the ending anyone had expected, but as Elias had discovered, the best solutions often came from the most unlikely directions. "So what's next?" Valeria asked. "Well, I hear there's a border dispute brewing in the Vega system. Apparently 2 species are arguing over mining rights. And you want to volunteer for mediation duty? Someone has to make sure they don't blow each other up before they discover they're both wrong about the asteroid composition." Valeria spread her wings and smiled. "Lead the way, Captain. I suspect the galaxy needs more accidental diplomats." The end.